And I have this little side fear that like Disney is going to see it and like swoop in and hire her away from me. But I can live with that. I'd rather have Helen have joy.
Hey there, and welcome to a brand new episode of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hossman. Joining me today is a brand new rock star. This is going to be interesting today. I'm really excited. He's a psychotherapist, an author, a podcaster, and a founder of the world's largest SFBT training organization for mental health professionals. He's also the author of Change Your Questions, Change Your Future. Elliott Connie, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to dive in. I want to start with your latest book, Change Your Questions, Change Your Future. Can you, as soon as I saw that title, I was very interested. I mean, I'm a marketing guy, I'm a sales guy, but I lead an organization. And so I think there's a couple different ways this can go. So can you talk a little bit about the book and why you wrote it?
Yeah. So we talk a lot about self-talk. Like as a psychotherapist, like all of us know, like the way you talk to yourself influences the reality in which you experience. But what we don't talk about is embedded in that self-talk are the questions you ask yourself and the way those questions impact you. So a really basic example, if something bad happens to you, right? Like you get hit with a bad news, like I got fired from my job, right? If you get fired from your job and you ask yourself, why did this happen to me? That leads you down a very negative path and typically down a very negative experience. However, if you train yourself to ask the kind of questions like, what can I do next? That leads you towards action. Action leads towards hope. Those people who have a tendency to ask those kinds of questions tend to be more resilient, have more hope, joy, fun in their lives. They tend to be the kind of people that turn bad news into opportunities. Like I'll tell you a quick story. I remember my mother once. I got fired. I literally got fired from my job. I was like 19. I was working as a cashier at a drugstore, and I got fired from my job. And I really needed this job. I was in college, and this was the job I used to pay for my books and pay for my stuff in college. And I got fired. And I remember going to my mom, and I was devastated that I got fired from this job. And I was not asking myself helpful kind of questions, not talking to myself in a helpful way. And I told my mom the whole story. The guy fired me. I did something silly. And I mean, I didn't do anything wrong or illegal or anything like that. But I didn't follow a particular procedure. He fired me, and I don't know what to do. My mother looked me right in my eyes, and she said, "That's okay, Elliott. You were looking when you found this job." She gave me a hug and went into her bedroom. And I remember thinking, what is going on in her mind that allows her to be calm, to be stable, and to have such a resolute belief? And that shift in question changed my experience. So as I do psychotherapy, I went on to become a psychotherapist. I've been a practicing psychotherapist for 20 years. I genuinely want people to have more joy in their lives. That's why I love the name of this podcast. Like, I want people to have more joy and happiness and peace. I want people to understand that no one has a pain-free or obstacle-free life. So we have to find joy within the journey. And in my experience, the joy is packaged in the questions. So we have to shift those questions in order to be able to change the future that we want to live in.
I love that. That's so powerful. There's a great book, obviously, other than Change Your Questions, Change Your Future. But John Acuff writes a book, Soundtracks, and he talks about that voice in your head. And part of it, the soundtracks is also just the stuff you say. But man, I totally buy into what you're saying, Elliott. And I don't know about you, but when I hear people ask those negative questions, it strikes me. Because you said, why did this happen to me? You also say, why do bad things always happen to me? And I was like, oh my gosh, talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Right.
Because you're asking your brain to go look for all those reasons.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's an interesting thing. Your brain will find what you teach it to look for.
Yeah.
And because life is filled, like already today, there's probably been about 1,000 bad things that have happened to me and 1,000 good things that have happened. Like, they're just all happening constantly all at once.
Yeah.
Happy people have trained their brain to see opportunity, and those are the people that win.
I love it. Okay. So we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, marketers, business leaders on this podcast, and mental health is a crucial issue today as leaders, right? Like, so
Yeah.
what are some ways you think leaders can create a more productive and happy workplace?
Man, that is such a loaded and large question.
Yeah, sorry.
The first thing I would say to people is we need to start thinking about mental health as a journey of wellness and not just a journey of problem management. So what I mean when I say that, so if you're the leader of an organization and I start talking about mental health, we automatically start thinking about depression, anxiety, alcoholism. We start thinking of the problems that have to be managed. But actually, I want you to think about people. I want you to ask yourselves, how often do you ask your employees how they're doing, what they did on the weekend, what hobbies they're engaged in? Like, mental health is obviously a really big part of my life. And I hired this woman. She's my brand manager. She's the most talented, creative person I ever met. And when I had my first interview with her name is Helen, I saw her Instagram page, and she has a web comic that she draws by hand and posts on her Instagram page. She's not super famous, nor does she want to be. It's just this amazing creative art that she does. So I asked her about it. I was like, hey, I saw your Instagram page. I saw this stuff that you draw. And she was like, I've been drawing that since I was like 12 years old. And when social media came up, I started posting it there. I'm in some webcomic communities and I really like it and it intrigues me and blah, blah, blah. And I said, all right, so one of the requirements for you working in my company is you have to continue posting that. If I ever look at your Instagram page and you're not posting, that's going to tell me you're being overworked and you don't have time in your life for your hobbies and your joys. That's how you attend to people's mental health. It's not just about asking Helen, are you anxious, depressed, frustrated, and sad? It's about like, are you being the version of Helen that you want to be? And is there anything I can do as the leader of this organization to facilitate that? Now, Helen's now been working for me for about 4 years. And she, maybe the proudest thing is she is still drawing her webcomic. She's still really excited about her webcomic. And I have this little side fear that Disney is going to see it and swoop in and hire her away from me. But I can live with that. I'd rather have Helen have joy. Now, I have other employees where something else is the thing that drives them. But as an employer, as a leader of your organization, how well do you know what makes your employees tick? If you know those answers, then you're in a position to help manage their well-being, which is connected to their mental health. Don't just wait for somebody to come to you and say, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm going through a divorce. Don't wait for those things. Create an environment where you genuinely show care, warmth, and even love for them by caring about them as a human being.
Man, that's a part I want everybody to rewind and listen to that again. That was super good, Elliott. I appreciate that. I'm literally listening to it going, okay, who do I need to check on?
Yeah.
Right. And so I appreciate you dropping some knowledge on that. So I like to ask, especially people getting to know for the first time here, who are some people that inspire you? Who are people that, kind of get you to elevate your game, and how do they do that?
So I'm a big reader, and I've been a big reader throughout my whole life. And when people often ask me that, and my answer usually surprises them, one of my first people that inspired me was Bruce Lee.
Okay.
Growing up, I grew up in a really difficult environment. My father was abusive and angry all the time, and I started realizing that joy is a choice, and this dude is not choosing joy. And I wanted to be someone that could change their life just by their choices. And so I knew a friend whose father was into martial arts. And I was so enamored by Bruce Lee movies, just like everyone was in the 80s and 90s. I wasn't born in the 70s, but Bruce Lee became a star in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I said to my friend's father, do you like Bruce Lee? And he said, no, that's not real karate, blah, blah, blah. And he told me that, Bruce Lee probably had a bigger impact on the world of philosophy than he did on the world of martial arts. And I was like, what? And he talked to me about this philosophy book. And literally the next day, I went to the library to get this book. I don't remember the title. I got it somewhere around here in the box.
Yeah.
I ran to it. Now, when Bruce Lee was alive and doing his thing, he broke his back in a karate match. And the doctors told him he would never walk again. And while he was in the hospital, laying on a gurney because he couldn't walk, he dictated a book to his wife about how he used his mind to reteach himself how to walk. So the book is about that journey from laying in his gurney to regaining his, ability to walk, and then ultimately becoming a movie star. And when I read that book, I don't know how old I was, maybe 15, let's say. I remember thinking, if he could will himself to walk, then you could will yourself into anything, right? So
Yeah.
that was the first time I remember being inspired. Now, subsequent to that, Nelson Mandela is a big source of inspiration to me. Albert Einstein is a big source of inspiration to me, even though I can't stand mathematics. I just like his book. So it's stuff like that. I want people, and people get mad at me, even in the field of psychotherapy, people get mad at me. I want people to know that you can heal from anything. You can literally heal from anything. And when I tell people that in my field, they say stuff like, Elliott, that's crazy. You can't fix everybody. And I always tell them, don't confuse every and any. Now, I don't say that I, as a psychotherapist, can create healing for every human I meet. That would be ridiculous. No therapist in the world has ever had a 100% success rate. What I am saying is no one that ever walks through the door of a psychotherapist's office should be excluded from the healing journey. There is no wound that can't be healed. Now, my hands might not be the ones that will be able to heal it, or maybe more specifically my words, but everyone can heal from anything. We can't, if you think about it, no doctor would see a wound on a human body and say, I can't stitch that one. It doesn't make any sense. So every human being deserves all of our best efforts all of the time. And when we're able to do that, I think the world becomes a much more beautiful place to live in. And that's the world I want to live in. So when I read that book with Bruce Lee, it literally changed the direction of my life, because I was like, man, this dude literally just told himself, I'm going to walk again. And people with medical degrees told him he was wrong, but he just told himself, I'm going to walk again. And I thought, so what if I just tell myself, I'm going to be happy? What if I just told myself, I'm not going to succumb to the environment in which I'm being, what if I just told myself I was just going to do it?
Yeah.
And that became a big, huge part of my life. Still is, actually.
Yeah, man, that's great. Wow, Elliott, that's really, really good. Okay, final question for you. This has been wonderful. Obviously, the book, Change Your Questions, Change Your Future. What are some tips? If you're listening to this podcast and you're like, okay, I need to get a hold of my inner questions. What are some tips on asking yourself better questions?
So here's the number one tip is all people do this all of the time. So everyone has a tendency to ask themselves useless questions, and everybody has a tendency to ask themselves useful questions. So the biggest tip I can tell people is, think of something in your life you are good at. Something in your life you have high confidence in your capabilities, in your everything. I want you to ask yourself, what questions do you ask yourself around that thing? And then extrapolate those questions to things that you are less confident and less aware that you are good at. That will literally begin to train your brain to start living in a space of hope, really.
Yeah. And growth. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, Elliott, this has been great. Where can folks find the book, find more information about you?
Man, all right. So go to my website, ElliottConnie.com. Make sure you spell my name with 2 L's and 2 T's, ElliottConnie.com. You can find me on social media at Elliott Speaks, and you can get this book anywhere you buy books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you buy books, this book is available. And I'm just looking literally to change one life. This book was a year-long labor of work and effort by me and my co-author, Dr. Adam Frower. And if it literally changes just one life, it will have been worth the whole journey. So I hope at least one person goes out there and buys the book and reads the inspirational stories and content within it and has their lives changed.
This has been really, really fun today, Elliott. I really appreciate it. I recommend everybody run out and grab it. And we'll have to do this again sometime, okay?
Yes, love that. Thanks, Kirby.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time.